was with my son on the beach when he did this out of the blue, and it became a day that neither of us would ever forget. The sun was just beginning to rise when we parked the car along the coast. The sky was painted with soft hues of orange and pink, and the cool ocean breeze swept through the open window as we gathered our things. My son, Ethan, was only 12, full of energy and curiosity, always ready to turn an ordinary day into something extraordinary. We had been planning this trip for weeks. Life had been busy, and I wanted nothing more than to carve out time with him, just the two of us. I packed a cooler with sandwiches, fruit, and his favorite lemonade, along with towels, sunscreen, and a frisbee. Ethan had brought his sketchbook and a bucket for shells, claiming he wanted to catch the ocean's secrets. His words always made me smile because they carried a kind of innocence that reminded me to see life through his eyes. When we stepped onto the beach, the sand was still cool beneath our feet, untouched by the heat of the day. The waves whispered against the shore, and there were only a few early walkers scattered along the coastline. We laid down our blanket, dropped the cooler beside it, and set out to explore. Ethan dashed ahead, his laughter trailing behind him like a melody. He chased the seagulls that took flight just as he got close, his arms stretched wide as though he might fly with them. I walked behind, letting him lead the way, my heart swelling at the sight of his joy. As the morning unfolded, we collected seashells, small stones, and even a piece of driftwood that Ethan declared looked like a pirate's sword. We built a sand castle near the water's edge, decorating it with the treasures we found, and every time a wave crept close, Ethan would guard it like a knight protecting a kingdom. By late morning, the beach had begun to fill with families, couples, and children running in and out of the surf. Ethan suggested we take a swim, so we changed and ran into the water together. The salt water was cool against our skin, refreshing as we dove beneath the waves and resurfaced with laughter. But it was in the early afternoon, after hours of playing and swimming, that the moment happened, the one that caught me completely off guard and shifted something deep inside me. We had settled back on the blanket, drying off in the sun, when Ethan grew unusually quiet. He pulled out his sketchbook, flipping through the pages, and then stopped on a fresh one. I thought he might start drawing shells or waves, but instead, he turned to me with wide eyes and said, "Mom, can I tell you something?" There was a seriousness in his voice that made me sit up straighter. "Of course, Ethan. You can tell me anything." He looked down at his hands for a long moment before speaking. "I've been scared to say this, but I don't want to be scared anymore." My heart raced as I tried to prepare for what he might reveal. Then he said, "I want to do something big. Something that makes a difference. Today, right now." I was confused but intrigued. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" He pointed toward the shoreline where small pieces of trash, plastic wrappers, a bottle, and some other debris, were scattered along the sand. "Look at that, Mom. The beach is so beautiful, but people don't take care of it. What if we cleaned it? Not just us, but what if we got others to help, too? What if today we tried to make the beach better?" I stared at him, amazed. Out of the blue, my 12-year-old son had found a purpose for the day that was bigger than building castles or swimming in the waves. It was simple, pure, and deeply meaningful. "That's a wonderful idea, Ethan," I said, my voice catching with emotion. "Let's do it." We stood up, grabbed the bucket he had brought for shells, and started picking up the trash we saw. At first, it was just us bending down to collect bits of plastic, paper, and cans, tossing them into the bucket. A few people nearby glanced our way, some with curiosity and others with indifference. But Ethan wasn't shy. He waved at a family sitting under an umbrella and said, "Do you want to help us clean the beach?" To my surprise, the family agreed. They got up, and soon their children were running along the sand, picking up trash and bringing it back. What started with just the two of us grew quickly. More families joined, couples who had been lounging in chairs began to pitch in, and even some teenagers who had been tossing a football came over to help. Ethan's enthusiasm was contagious. He kept encouraging everyone, thanking them, and cheering them on. His small idea blossomed into a community effort, and in less than an hour, dozens of people were working together, filling bags with trash and clearing the beach of debris. I watched my son move among strangers, his confidence shining. He wasn't just cleaning, he was leading, inspiring others to care. I realized in that moment that he was teaching me something, too. I had brought him to the beach to give him memories, but he was the one giving me a memory I would treasure forever. By late afternoon, the beach looked different, cleaner, brighter, more alive. People who hadn't known each other before were now chatting, laughing, and feeling proud of what they had accomplished together. A group of kids built a giant sandcastle with the driftwood and shells we had collected earlier, and Ethan stood beside it, grinning from ear to ear. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the waves, Ethan sat beside me on the blanket. His hair was messy, his skin sun-kissed, and his eyes full of life. "Mom," he said softly, "do you think we made a difference?" I put my arm around him and pulled him close. "Yes, Ethan. You made a huge difference. You reminded everyone here that we all have the power to care, to do something that matters. You reminded me, too." We sat there in silence for a while, watching the sun dip lower into the horizon. The sky turned shades of pink and purple, and the ocean shimmered like liquid gold. I thought about how quickly children grow, how fast moments pass, and how important it is to hold on to days like this. On the drive home, Ethan fell asleep in the back seat, his head resting against the window, his sketchbook on his lap. I glanced at him through the rearview mirror, my heart swelling with pride. Out of the blue, he had turned an ordinary beach day into something extraordinary, something meaningful, something unforgettable. That night, after tucking him into bed, I opened his sketchbook. On the page he had started at the beach, he had drawn a big heart around a clean shoreline with the words, "One person can start something big." Tears filled my eyes as I closed the book and kissed his forehead. The next morning, I shared the story with a friend, and soon word spread about what Ethan had done. Within weeks, local groups reached out, wanting to organize regular beach cleanups. Ethan was invited to talk about his experience at school, and he told his classmates, "I didn't do anything special. I just did something instead of nothing." And he was right. Sometimes the most powerful actions come from the simplest choices, from moments that appear out of the blue, from the courage of a child who sees the world not for what it is, but for what it could be. Ethan continued to inspire me long after that day. Every time we returned to the beach, he carried his bucket, not just for shells, but for change. And every time I looked at him running along the sand, chasing seagulls or diving into. Please, sorry. Second part next story.